What's going on, folks? Jeff Kassouf here with This Week in Women's Soccer on North American Soccer Network. Um, Very interesting week, to say the least, folks. As any of you following women's soccer know, we were all geared up to talk tactics, to talk the Olympics. Women's Olympic qualifying for CONCACAF just ended. U.S. just ran through everybody, including Canada in the final, which was a bit unexpected for such a good Canada team, and wasn't meant to be. So here we are on the day of potentially the death of WPS. Women's professional soccer has suspended operations for 2012, and they certainly plan to come back in 2013, but we know how some of these things can work. So who knows what a year from now brings. I mean, it'd be a bit crazy to speculate, but we might try. But a very, very tough day for, I know, a lot of players that have kind of taken to Twitter, that I've spoken with. A lot of tough day, a tough day for fans for sure. So we'll get to sort of how everything went down. We have some audio from you for you from the press conference or the conference call today. So it's a day that, unfortunately, at least me personally, and talking to a few people that cover the league regularly, and I guess there's only a handful, unfortunately, but today's announcement seems to be not too surprising, which is very sad, obviously. But I think that I couldn't even tell you how many times in the past, I couldn't even count how many times I've sat here at the dinner table with family, or talking to fellow journalists, or even people within teams or leagues, and I sat here thinking, well, is this the end? I mean, we've had a lot of these instances of Gold Pride folding, and then everything that followed with Chicago Red Stars dropping down, and obviously sort of the key, or the more key component of the Washington Freedom and what happened with them. But we also had St. Louis Athletica. We had the Los Angeles Soul. I mean, just a whole series of things. And WPS on Monday deciding that it was time to suspend operations for 2012 rather than go forward with the sort of ongoing problems with Magic Jack. And obviously, those problems do still exist. I mean, the sort of compromise that was settled on didn't make the lawsuit go away. And WPS has kind of reminded us here throughout Monday that those legal fees have added up, and both financially, combined with what needs to be done, which is continuing to deal with the situation, is not something that the current 5 ownership groups want to move forward with. They want to start anew, in a sense, start anew. That might not be the best way to phrase it, but they need to sort of wash their hands of this situation, and they don't want to go through the season dealing with it, which is completely understandable. But I mean, it seemed like a week ago that things were fine, things were good to go. The compromise, as I said last week, was a bit of a circus act to me, to have Magic Jack playing exhibition games and essentially playing league games for all you really want to call it, but not counting in the standings. So, I think it was a bit of a ludicrous compromise, but it was something. It was a league. It was 5 teams that were officially still in the league, still having a schedule, still playing. So a week later, 2 weeks later, to go from just having a draft, and we saw this, there's a lot of things that are really strangely and almost in a creepy way similar to past events. I mean, you look at the Los Angeles Soul folding. It was approximately two or so weeks after the draft, and actually, it could be almost to the day, because it was late January. Should look that up. I mean, that is just, it's very similar, and it's I don't know. It seems like it's almost this warped twilight zone happening. And if you followed the league since it started, you know what I'm talking about. If not, it's basically summed up as this is not the first bump in the road, but it's certainly a big one. So, WPS, what happens next is the big question. And, I think if you've sort of followed me and followed my writing or coverage throughout, I've certainly been sort of optimistic about things. I think that there have been strides made, business side, even on the field. But, I just don't see a break, quote unquote, actually being that. You take a year off, you go in the dark basically for a year because, and I asked this on the conference call, what are the plans for 2012 in terms of just keeping a name out there, keeping some type of relevance, which, there's really, how do you keep any relevance without an actual league? And the answer is they don't know right now. And WSA did some festivals, they did some tournaments, which in the end, as we know, were ultimately unsuccessful because WSA is gone. So how do you keep things relevant? How do you keep WPS relevant? Boston Breakers took to Twitter today and said that they will explore options in the W League or WPSL. Essentially the same thing said by the Western New York Flash. They said they will play at the highest level as a professional team in the United States in 2012, whatever that may be. So it sounds like a return to the W League where they won the 2010 title before moving up to WPS. But still, if WPS comes back, it's still not going to be the same because you have this sort of, I think you're forced into this sort of downsized situation. And I know that Peter Wilt's argument or article on pitch invasion from about a month ago has been referenced a lot. I think there's some very good points in it. And regardless of whether you agree with it or not, I think it might certainly be reality if WPS does find a way back in 2013. Because, listen, there's just no way that you go dark like this. And then I think the most accurate thing to say here is there's no way that you could predict what's going to happen a year from now because you got 5 ownership groups who said that they want to do it. You've got some folks on the sideline who want to be expansion teams. But, what does a year from now bring is the question. I don't have the answer, and WPS doesn't have the answer because there's a lot to be done in the interim. So, it's really sort of a waiting game, and it's sad because you look at the success the women's national team had last year at the World Cup, even off the field. You look at what they did in the media and how they made a country of not only fans but even journalists care about women's soccer. And it really didn't directly correlate to WPS. There was an attendance boost, but lost in that figure is even that the attendance boost was still producing a number, or at least an average attendance at the end of the season that was yet again lower than where WPS began. So, I think here you really have 2 distinctions of the U.S. women's national team success and sort of soccer on this global stage, women's soccer on this global stage, and WPS, which hasn't really found that correlation. They found it in small glimpses with 15,000 in Rochester on the return of the national team, with 10,000 plus at the championship game in Rochester, but they haven't found a way to sort of directly correlate this. And if we're being completely honest, women's soccer, and maybe not women's professional soccer, but women's soccer was, I don't want to say was in the sense that it's past tense now, but it really peaked in 2011 in terms of interest. And maybe you say it's not a peak, maybe you hope that it's just sort of the beginning of a rise in the trend. But regardless, it spiked at the very least. And WPS did not find a way to make that translate into success for them. So now you come into this Olympic year where we've been talking this whole time about, can they do the same thing? Can the women's national team go and make the country care again at the Olympics and bring back gold for the 3rd straight time and make that translate to WPS? we're not going to know now. And if they can't do it in a World Cup year, if they can't do it in an Olympic year, then I certainly don't see how they're going to do it in those 2 years of sort of darkness, if you will, of no major tournaments. And that's harping on the national team WPS correlation a bit too much, but it's one that a lot of people like to bring up, and it's true. So I guess if you haven't seen already, behind me here we got a couple of paying homage to WPS, even some defunct teams. Ironically, that first split jersey there is the LA Soul jersey that never was, which if you follow me or know me, that's certainly, I think it's a classy kit, but never got worn. And unfortunately, that is the case for plenty of things in this league, that they never got worn, they never happened, they never came to be, or when they did come to be, things fell apart. So got a couple clips here from the conference call today. First one that I think that we should have a listen to here is Jennifer O'Sullivan. She's talking about the possibility of Magic Jack being back in 2013, assuming that WPS is even back in 2013. And that is, this is her talking about that in terms of what they would do with the team, because remember that deal for 2012 and 2013 was to have Magic Jack play exhibitions, and who knows what the future holds for that. But let's have a listen to Jennifer O'Sullivan talking about the prospect of 2013 and Magic Jack.
I do not see that as a possibility based on the feeling, the current feeling among the current ownership. I don't see that will be a possibility for WPS.
So no real surprise there. Obviously, the whole reason for this sort of suspension of the league play is really, I mean, at least in WPS's terms of what they're saying, is largely in part due to Magic Jack and Dan Borislaw. So certainly two sides to every story. There's a lot more going on there. I mean, people have pointed out the problems, many of which I just mentioned, go far beyond this. They go back to earlier in 2011. They go back to 2010 to 2009 even. So, there's a lot more going on there. But clearly, I don't think it gets any clearer from what O'Sullivan said, that Magic Jack won't be around. So either there's some reincarnation of a different league somewhere else. Maybe Borislaw, finally gets his sort of international league tournament that he wants. Who knows? But those two, as has been clear for a very long time now, they're not going to be together. So, yeah. And then I think another telling comment from this Atlanta Beat owner, Fitz Johnson, was on the call as well. And he discussed the he was asked, did you see this coming when you terminated Magic Jack? Could you have foreseen this becoming this legal battle that really brings the league to this point where, I mean, it's almost brought the league to, at worst, extinction, at best, sort of irrelevance and silence. So here's what he had to say, which was essentially, no, we couldn't have seen it. But, I think if you followed this again, a lot of people, I was able to get the first interview with Mr. Borislaw about 13, 14 months ago. And I think you could tell from the start that there were some I's that weren't dotted and some T's that weren't crossed when WPS and him spoke. So here's what Fitz Johnson had to say about the foreshadowing of what happened with Magic Jack over the past 6 months.
Just a quick follow-up. Did you realize at the time of the termination decision that it would lead to this, that it would prompt this chain of events, mainly in the courts, that have led us to this point?
No, I didn't. If we're all in this for what's right for these players and for our fans, this is not the conclusion that I would have got to.
there's a lot more that went on behind the scenes with a lot of different things. And Fitz even said that in the conference call. I mean, a lot of people asking questions, harping on sort of he just didn't follow the rules. Why don't you just fine him or just do this or that? And I think it's clear folks asking those questions certainly haven't really followed the league or this saga very closely, because that's just I mean, they did that. It's not like they haven't tried these things. They went far beyond that, and they went far beyond just breaking the rules. I mean, you're talking about people doing business with each other, and when two people don't see eye to eye, they're not going to do further business together. So, I mean, that's really what it is. It was 5 groups of people who didn't see eye to eye with essentially one man. And I mean, it was beyond 5 groups of people. You add in the actual league office. So, not taking sides. I mean, I think that for anyone to really take sides completely is a little bit crazy, because we still don't have the story fully straight. And believe me, plenty of us have tried. There's a lot out there that just hasn't really been fully shared. So maybe that'll come out soon enough. We've heard some murmurings of it, but who knows? We have seen some funny stuff, at least on a lighter note, that has come out of this. If you want to check out Tasha Kai's Twitter, who said some things that I'm not, I'll let you read them. I'm not going to repeat them, about Mr. Borislaw. Pretty funny. So you can check that out. Let's see. Her Twitter is Tasha_Kai, I believe, 00. And she had her few comments about him, and plenty of players have. I mean, it's certainly upsetting for them. They're faced with now, thankfully for them, some of the leagues in Europe, Sweden being the one that was mentioned, I'm not positive on all of them, have sort of extended transfer windows until March, because otherwise the January transfer window ends essentially in a day. So it's going to be tough for a lot of these players to sort of find a home now, but it's sort of the unfortunate reality of it. And then I guess on one more lighter note that we were able to pick up from the conference call, and I don't mean it in a mean way of laughing at anyone, but I can say that, and I think that we touched on this either on equalizersoccer.com or in the show last week about the league looking into and trying to finalize a deal with a manufacturer to supply uniforms and a ball, as they had with Puma for the first 3 years. And they were close to, from what I understand, finalizing a deal. And I was on that impression before this call today about the league suspending operations. And that's what was said on the call as well, except some journalists on the call who did not have their phones muted didn't feel the same way about it. Let's just take a listen. If we can pick up that audio, you might have to listen closely, but some folks didn't quite believe that there was a apparel company about to come on board.
As far as the apparel deal, the league was in final discussions with a sponsor on apparel.
So we had to throw that one in there. Maybe a little bit more funny to me or some folks that were on the call than anyone listening in. But I guess it's just you don't hear that very often. I haven't been on any call that I've heard journalists sort of laugh at an answer like that. So certainly interesting, certainly rude as well. But we're going to do a break here. I think we've we've only scratched the surface of the problem for WPS, but it's become an exhausting day of dealing with it. So we'll go to break, and we will soon talk about the Olympic qualifying that went on in Vancouver that just ended on Sunday, which we thought we'd be leading off with and certainly having as the main topic, but how silly we were in the world of women's soccer. So we'll be right back after this. Stay with us. And we're back here on This Week in Women's Soccer. Again, I'm your host, Jeff Kassouf from equalizersoccer.com. Thanks for staying with us. We talked quite a bit about the WPS situation, and obviously a lot of WPS players were up in Vancouver over this past 11 days or so, this past 2 weeks, training for and competing for a spot in the Olympics. Things pretty much went as expected. United States and Canada qualifying for the 2012 Olympics in London. And they did so about 12 hours before they learned, or many of them learned, that their WPS teams were essentially no more, at least for this season. So, U.S. women end this tournament on a pretty much how they started, absolutely emphatically, with a 4-0 win over Canada. I mean, Canada, I don't know if it was nerves, if it was simply being outclassed, outplayed, but Canada looked like they just did not show up. And credit to Coach John Herdman for taking that blame and saying, I just didn't select the right team and Pia outmanaged me today. And I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing to say Pia Sundhage outmanaged you, because she's proven, I think she's proven, that currently she's one of the best managers in the world on the international level. It's not anything to be ashamed about, but you look at this performance from the United States, and it's truly, it's unbelievable how dominating it was. You talk about the 14-0 over Dominican Republic, 13-0 over Guatemala. We talked about that last week. And since last week's show, we've had the 4-0, we've had the Mexico game, and that was pretty much routine as well. It was a little tougher. The shocking part here is that the toughest game the U.S. had was against Costa Rica, who in the group stage looked like they wouldn't even compete with the U.S. I mean, you look at how Costa Rica lost that game 5-1 to Canada to end the group stage, and it was ugly. I mean, especially in the back. Costa Rica made some changes. They came out, they were fiery. Really, they should have probably at least been level with the U.S. at halftime. That one chance that they had from about 30 yards out that smacked off the crossbar certainly had Hope Solo beat, which is not something that gets said much at all. And, unfortunately for Costa Rica, it slammed in the crossbar. So that was probably the toughest game, and the U.S. still prevailed in that pretty handily once they got that second goal. And then they go up against Canada, and it's over quickly. Alex Morgan, very early on, I think she showed something, particularly with that early goal in that opening few minutes, that we know she's fast. We know her skill set is get in behind the defense, outrun somebody, and finish. So she's very much sort of a breakaway forward. And that's sort of what that goal was, but there was a lot of sort of presence of what was around her that went into that goal. You look at the long ball that Abby Wambach flicks on. Morgan's run starts when it needs to start. Otherwise, she doesn't even get near that ball. It starts well before that flick on even comes. She knows the flick on is coming. And that's very good awareness by her to know that Wambach is going to do that. And I think, Wambach known for being good in the air. I think, most people should know that she's going to do that. She gets in behind the defense, and then beyond that, she was very physical enough to absolutely body off a very good center back in Candace Chapman, who fell completely to the ground, and a nice finish with the left foot. And then Morgan, obviously, she gets a second one on a breakaway as well, really, in the second half. And she sets up both of Abby Wambach's goals, which those two put her into second place alone, in second place all time, in front of Christine Lilly with 131 goals now. So, it was the Abby and Alex show, as Karen Lush wrote on EqualizerSoccer.com. She was there in Vancouver for us, and it was certainly a nice little coming out party, I think, for Alex Morgan, who played, at least started, very strong. She comes on well off the bench, and Pia Sundhage, who's refreshingly honest in the media, even has said in the past, she comes on, she's fast, and we know we can put her in the 80th minute. Their defenders are tired, and she's going to torch them. Well, she torched them in the 4th minute. So, and she didn't just torch them. She outmuscled them. She was able to finish. She was very aware. She was combining. I thought her composure on the one Wambach goal where Carly Lloyd smacks it off the post, it comes back out to Morgan. And I think a lot of young forwards would just say, all right, let me put this back on frame. Even though she had 2 defenders closing her down, she calmly takes a touch and plays it to Wambach, a simple 5-yard square ball across the 6-yard box. And it's an easy finish for Wambach instead of maybe rushing it and missing that shot. So that one key play, I think, out of everything, if I had to put my finger on one thing, was very impressive from Alex Morgan. So great stuff there. Abby Wambach again proven that she can finish, and then the back line really still the question mark for the U.S. Who's going to be Ali Krieger's replacement? Even if Ali's ready for the Olympics, which, given the extent of the injury, the torn ACL, MCL, seems like a bit of a stretch, but I know she's optimistic about it. So even if she's ready and it's going to be close, you still have to prepare for these Olympics with somebody at right back. And, who's it going to be? I mean, Kelly O'Hara was there once, and then we saw her in a left back role as well. Rachel Bueller has gotten time there. Heather Mitz played there on Sunday night in the championship. So there's really a lot going on there. It does seem that Becky Sauerbrunn seems to be getting a good look at center back, which I like. I think Becky Sauerbrunn is still very underappreciated on that team. I think she's one of the best defenders that they have, and I think that she certainly deserves the time in that lineup. So the question really is outside back. I'm not sure. I haven't seen too much criticism of O'Hara, but I have to say I really like what she brings to the table as an outside back who, she's a hard-working defender. We saw that against Costa Rica where she tracked back and she closed down about 10 or 15 yards. She made up that ground, which was very impressive. But more so, she's a former forward. A lot of forwards convert to outside back. And what that gives her is the ability to set up high and wide when the U.S. has possession and add an extra element to that attack. And that's going to be really something that we didn't get to see out of the U.S., at least on the left side last year. We saw it with Ali Krieger. We didn't really see it on the left side. And you look at, particularly when O'Hara was on the right side, combining with Heather O'Reilly, I thought that was really sort of a picture of, what can this back line do offensively to start the attack and keep possession. And that was really very impressive from O'Hara combining with O'Reilly there. And then obviously on the left side against Guatemala, she had the 3 assists. So impressive there. Hope Solo in net. The injury, hopefully, this New Zealand friendly that's coming up on February 11th, hopefully she gets some time to rest. That is what I would personally say, but who knows? We've seen before that she'll play through a lot of stuff. So really quite a tournament for the U.S. I think that you look at how they're playing, and they're playing some of their best soccer in a long time. And Pearson Haga has had her critics, me notwithstanding. I mean, not recently at least, but I've certainly added to that at times, and I'll be the first to say that. But I have been sort of in her corner, if you will, or whatever you want to call it, over the past, I'd say, 8 months, because you look at how she has made this U.S. team sort of buy into what she's doing. It's really incredible. I mean, as a former player, I can tell you, if you have a coach like that, who you believe in, who's very positive, who you're not going to take a bad touch and get absolutely scrutinized, there's something that makes you want to play for them. And it's clear, it's very clear in what these players say, in what they, you can see it in their eyes, how they act, that they believe in Pearson Haga. And that's a big, big difference. And to all the people that are on the internet saying they don't believe, Well, the players believe, and they're certainly making it look pretty. So, I think that the criticism of her has been a little bit overboard. I mean, I thought she did very well managing this team in the World Cup. I thought she did very well in this Olympic tournament, this Olympic qualifying tournament, of really rotating players. I mean, she proved to us that that squad is 20 deep and there's really no drop-off. Because when she put that lineup out against Canada, I thought, yeah, I mean, not that anyone out there is a bad player, but I didn't think that it was necessarily sort of, if you took the players who'd played really well in that tournament, that you were getting your best 11, at least, of who was in form. And they went out there and proved plenty of people wrong, because they just absolutely smoked the competition in Canada. So, you have to trust Pia, even if you don't necessarily like what she's doing. Maybe you want somebody else in the game. She's really found a way to manage this team very well. So I think credit to her. And then Canada, there's been some disappointment, obviously, with the World Cup. They're seeing the Olympics as sort of redemption. And I think that, there's a lot of time to build up to it. I think Sunday was a real eye-opener, and maybe it's an eye-opener in a good way, but they've got a long way to go. I mean, there's a very long way to go there, particularly, I think, in the back. I mean, I think the back line was a bit of a problem in the World Cup, and it certainly hasn't been solved. So John Herdman's got a lot to think about in terms of his back four and sorting that out, because McLeod and, Erin McLeod and Karina LeBlanc are very good goalkeepers, but they can't take that kind of abuse, if you will, in net and, keep a clean sheet every time. So there's a lot that has to go on in front of her. Melissa Tancredi needs to sort of step up, as she did quite a bit in this tournament. I was pretty impressed with her. I think she's the main candidate, but somebody has to step up and sort of take the scoring, the weight of scoring off of Christine Sinclair's shoulders. So a lot to think about for Canada. And, beyond the U.S. and Canada, I thought Costa Rica looked very good in that semifinal and pretty impressive. Mexico looked pretty strong. I think that the Canada-Mexico game was certainly by far the best game we had in this tournament. Back and forth, close to back and forth, at least, maybe not by scoreline, but Mexico really pressed, and the environment there in BC Place, everything was just great on that evening. So, we'll see. We'll see if Mexico and Costa Rica can make some noise, as really, I guess, the next chance would be the 2015 World Cup, which is a bit far out there, but they've got some time to build. So that'll about do it for us on this here second week of This Week in Women's Soccer. Certainly glad to have you guys on board. Not the most pleasant of topics for a lot of you, I'm sure. Probably not wanting to hear too much about WPS suspending operations. Certainly saddening. I mean, I've covered the league since, inaugural kick. But I don't know. I mean, I guess it's sad, but, like I said, it seemed like it was coming. Maybe not necessarily now. It was a bit surprising that it was right now. But, I mean, it seemed like it was coming on many different occasions. So stay tuned. We'll keep bringing you various pieces of news, various interviews. It is an Olympic year, so there's plenty going on, and we'll have plenty to talk about. So stay with us until next week, or perhaps even sooner. I'm Jeff Kassouf from EqualizerSoccer.com, your host. Catch you later.